My parents humiliated the homeless on Christmas Eve. Confess your sins. I documented everything. The article destroyed their reputation. Every Christmas Eve, my family found a homeless man outside Pine Street shelter. Dad would arrive in his cleanest shirt. Mom would leave looking churchy. They'd search the throng for the proper guy. Someone alone. Someone who looked so beat up they would accept anything. Someone whose absence for a few hours wouldn't be missed. He'd get meals, warmth, and $150. Always $150 to get in their car. I thought this was charity, that we were wonderful people for welcoming the poor. Mom cooked all day. Turkey, ham, with every side possible. The fine china appeared. The house smelled like rosemary and brown butter. My job at age 9 was to set the homeless man's table perfectly. Mom claimed fork placement mattered. Everything had to be precise. Next steps were always the same. He would arrive with a rucksack full of belongings, often shivering from cold, withdrawal, or panic. Our niceness and normality constantly confused them. Dad would gently hang their coat. Mom offered them excellent soap to wash perfect for the first hour. We talked weather, football, and nothing. He relaxed and smiled. Dad would signal then. He tapped his wine glass 3 times with his wedding ring. "Time for grace," he said. Then everything changed. Our grace wasn't prayed. My family called it confession. The homeless man had to step up and admit every sin, failure, and moment that brought them to the streets. No money if they refused. No money if they quit. Nobody got paid if they sobbed too much. My granddad started it 35 years ago. Claimed humiliation was redemption. I'd seen 6 men cry at dinner by age 15. James cried over losing his daughter to foster care. Thomas, whose hands shook, confessed to stealing from his mother before her death. Carlos, who hardly spoke English but understood our needs. Annually, it became worse. My older brother recorded them on his phone. Cousins asked creepy questions. "Have you sold your body? Did you hurt anyone? Why aren't your kids talking? Man from 17 haunts me." Ryan. He was young, maybe 27, and tried to disguise cigarette. Burns on his neck with a soiled scarf. Ryan rose up like he'd done this before when Dad tapped the glass. Different house, same game. "You want me to degrade myself for money?" he whispered. "I get it, I'll do it. But can the kids leave the room?" Dad said. "Children should learn consequences," he said. Ryan addressed me directly when he spoke. About bad foster homes. About using anything he could find to self-medicate. Underbridge assault last week. Aunt Susan took notes like a sociology class. As Ryan finished, my family applauded. Dad slipped $30 over the table. "That's it?" Ryan asked. "You said $150? "That was before we knew what kind of man you really were," Dad remarked. Ryan accepted $30 and asked for leftovers without arguing. Mom brought 2 lunches. But no turkey. That was family only. At 17, I learned Ryan had died. Froze 3 blocks from our house behind a dumpster 3 weeks after dinner. It appeared in the school newspaper. His scarf was the same as the photo. The newspaper said he tried to enter a warming center but didn't have $30, $10 less than my family paid him for his embarrassment vomited up in school bathroom. Then I did something new. I visited Pine Street shelter. My family was known by staff. We were notorious. They called us Christmas vultures. Men returned traumatized every year, $150 richer but worse off. The shelter attempted phoning the police, but nothing was wrong. Just cruel. I warned their choice on December 23rd. Before my family arrived, I waited outside Pine Street at 4 o'clock. My blood froze as I saw something. My parents were there sooner than ever, with others. My mom was talking to Jake, my McDonald's co-worker. He lived in his van for 3 months after his residence burned down. Not even at the shelter. He was at his customary location by the dumpsters where we put out outdated food. He wore his uniform under his coat. "No," I ran toward. "Jake, don't go with them." My parents' confusion turned to wrath. "Sweetie," Mom gritted. "What are you doing here? I work with him." I faced Jake. "Don't do this. I'll give you $30 now. $40. Whatever you need." Jake looked bewildered between us. "Your daughter is generous," he told my parents. "But they already offered $250. I'm going with them." I remained transfixed on the curb, watching Jake's exhausted hand on the vehicle door handle and his face light up at my parents' promises. Sweat streamed down my back as the December cold pierced through my jacket, my heart pounding so loudly I felt everyone could hear it. Jake wore his McDonald's outfit under his coat, the same as last week when I saw him eating day-old fries in the break room. Like royal escorts, my parents flanked him. They looked worried and heated. The ideal charity. I had about 60 seconds before he got in the car, and it was too late to stop it. My legs moved before my intellect. The words came out quickly as I gripped Jake's arm. Jake, don't go with them. It's not what you think. My parents' faces changed from surprise to angry, but their tones remained warm and lovely. Mom smiled and tightened her teeth. Sweetie, what are you doing here? You should be at home helping with dinner preparations, Dad said worriedly. The one he used when relatives were watching. Jake glanced bewildered between us, his hand on the door but not yet opening it. Mom approached and put her false soft hand on my shoulder, digging in enough to hurt. We're giving this nice young man a Christmas dinner and some help. Grace and respect for the poor. You know how essential it is to our family. Dad nodded and grinned at Jake like best friends. I felt sick when I heard, we're willing to offer $250 instead of our usual amount because Jake here seems like such a hard worker who deserves support. They paid more to compensate for my influence to get Jake to say yes despite my warnings. Jake apologized and calculated as he looked at me. I really need the money, he whispered. He weighed my caution against his need. $250 means I can get my car fixed and maybe afford a weekly motel room. I appreciate you worrying, but your parents seem like good people and I've done worse things for less cash. Money won the fight. His belongings were in the rear seat of his car behind the dumpsters. Every night winter got colder. An intense flash recollection nearly had me vomit on the pavement standing Samuel at our table. He tried to disguise cigarette burns on his neck with a soiled scarf. He whispered as he begged the youngsters to go before degrading himself. My dad laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard, stating kids needed to learn consequences. Samuel looked at me as he talked about bad foster homes and the bridge assault last week. Aunt Susan took notes like a college lecture. 3 weeks later, the newspaper photo. Samuel frozen behind a dumpster 3 blocks from our house, scarf intact. He couldn't afford the $30 warming center entry charge, according to the newspaper $10 less than my family gave him for humiliation. My eyesight blurred and I tasted bile, but the sickness stimulated my mind. Words spilled out before I could stop them. The confession will be required. My family will observe, take notes, and ask personal questions as you stand up at their dinner table and tell them everything that happened to you, every mistake you made, and why you ended up on the streets. My brother will record it on his phone. After you break down in front of everyone and tell them things you've never told anybody, they'll give you $30 instead of $250. Possibly $40 if they're generous. My voice shook. But I continued. They'll say it's because of what kind of person you are, that you didn't earn the full amount. My parents' masks dropped, and I saw severe rage underneath. Jake's expression became cautious. He eventually released the car door. It wasn't a rejection to go with my parents, but it wasn't full agreement either. I held on to that uncertainty like a lifeline. I was shaking as I gave him my number on my phone while my parents watched with tight smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Hissing in my ear, Dad grabbed my elbow and bruised it. Mom said, "You're sabotaging a family tradition and there will be serious consequences when you get home. Sweetie, we'll discuss your episode later. You should go home now to reflect about your behavior and why you're so disrespectful." I left Dad's grip and proceeded toward the shelter entrance instead of their car, shivering but moving. Mom called, but I didn't turn. My fingers fumbled as I texted Emily on my phone. Emergency. Do you know where Jake parks his car and what time his shift ends today? She replied instantly. Behind McDonald's dumpsters, shift ends at 8. Are you okay? I typed quickly. I'll explain everything soon, but right now I need to find Jake before my family does. The shelter was warm and smelled like coffee and raw clothes. I approached the front desk and saw a haggard gray-haired woman looking up from her computer. Can I ask you something? Do you know about a family that picks up homeless men every Christmas Eve? She gasped. Over her shoulder she called, Chris, come talk to this girl. A 30-year-old case manager in jeans and a coffee-stained sweatshirt emerged from a back office. Are you related to the Christmas vultures? He said. Yes. Chris waved me down a hallway past rows of bunk beds to a small office that smelled like coffee and paper. After closing the door, he sat behind a desk with folders and resource pages. He didn't chat or reassure me before speaking. He simply stated that my family had been doing this for years and that guys would return to the shelter shaking and crying, but with money. He said the shelter personnel called the police several times but found no crime. You can't arrest people for being cruel, he said. The men went voluntarily because they needed the cash. His bland matter-of-fact voice, like he was reading a report, made things worse. Hearing my relatives shout it out made me sick. Finding out we were known and loathed, shame weighed on my chest, but rage was keen. Chris produced a resource leaflet from a filing cabinet when I inquired how we might help Jake. His offer was a one-night motel coupon if Jake arrived to the shelter before 6 p.m. today. Even though it cost $30, the warming center was better than freezing. Jake might get cash the day after Christmas at several day labor places. Chris marked sheet alternatives in yellow as I snapped images of each part with my phone. Not a rescue plan or anything dramatic. It was tangible advice I could provide Jake instead of nebulous threats. Chris shook his head slowly when I asked if we might notify the police about my family habits. He stated they needed criminal proof and willing victims to bring charges. Emotional abuse and manipulation weren't prosecutable when the person consented, even for money. While the legal reality was frustrating, Chris seemed to have dealt with this previously and recognized the system's boundaries. My mind clicked after a moment of helplessness. I needed evidence of my family's behavior that people could comprehend. Chris advised me not to record anyone without their agreement, but stated recording my family's actions at home may be lawful. My mind was planning as I rose up and thanked him. My family's documents would provide evidence before tonight. The films my brother kept, Aunt Susan's notes, and everything else I found. I left the shelter and went home. Clutching the driving wheel, I saw my brother's car gone in the driveway when I returned home. He visited his lover in the afternoons before family events. I discreetly entered his room and closed the door. I opened his laptop with shaking hands, knowing he backed up to the cloud. I was fearful of what I would find, but more afraid of doing nothing while Jake became Samuel. The laptop opened to his desktop, and I clicked media folders. Top on the list was family memories. I clicked it and got dozens of videos. Most have humorous titles or coded names. I chose one from 2 years ago and played. A middle-aged man cried at our dinner table while discussing losing custody of his children. My Aunt Susan was writing in her notebook in the background. The recording showed my family chuckling at the man's words. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room, but I kept watching despite its casual cruelty. Must see everything. The video ended, and I went downstairs to the dining room. Aunt Susan always left her leather notepad on the hutch between family meetings. I grabbed it and leafed through it. Every page has handwritten notes regarding guests from different years. Clinical notes on redemption, authenticity, and degradation responses. She recorded every humiliation like a scientific project, analyzing how each man reacted to being broken down. My disgust increased as I snapped each page on my phone. I put on headphones and opened another file from my brother's phone backup in my room. A brief audio clip. He broke down talking about being assaulted under a bridge. The timestamp indicated 2 years ago. That dinner came to mind. I remember being 14 and thinking the man was emotional about his story. My family's voices were asking deeper inquiries, demanding more facts. I realized then what I was viewing. On my bed, I reviewed everything on my phone. Men crying videos. Aunt Susan's notes, photographs. Creepy audio files. It showed the pattern and proved this wasn't charity but premeditated humiliation. My decision became clear. I would risk exposing my family because I couldn't continue. My Aunt Susan's notes have a philosophical framework portion at the back. Her clean penmanship outlined my grandfather's original justification. Earning redemption through humiliation builds character and gratitude. The discomfort is the point. True charity requires the recipient to acknowledge their failures. Her scholarly presentation of human suffering as a theory to be evaluated made me enraged. All the files went to a hidden phone folder and a thumb drive in my rucksack. I locked my bedroom door and put my desk chair under the handle for extra security. My phone's files feel heavy, like proof of something horrific. I scanned through the videos again with my back to the door. Watching men cry while my family laughs. The proof is strong, but using it means destroying all bridges with my parents, and I'm 17 with a part-time McDonald's job and no housing plan. Emily texts my phone. She drove by McDonald's 20 minutes ago and spotted Jake's car always parked behind the trash. His shift concludes at 8. She asks what's up and I type back quickly, my thumb's working before I can think. Since my family is targeting my coworker, who works my shifts, I need to rest at her place tonight. Because I can't go home after what I'm about to do. She instantly gives her address and invites you over. Select Jake's number and call. Rings 4 times. Goes to voicemail. I breathe and speak. I introduce myself, say we work together, and ask him not to drive with my parents tonight. My voice cracks when I narrate dinner proceedings. They'll make him stand up and discuss everything horrible that made him live in his car. Questions regarding trauma, addiction, and failure will be invasive. Yet, my family will document and note him like a science experiment. They may offer him $30 instead of $250. I provide a shelter lodging certificate and $75 cash if he needs it. Other possibilities exist besides my family. I hang up and gaze at my phone, hoping he checks his messages before 7 tonight. Chris from the shelter emails my laptop. The highway motel certificate is good for 1 night, but Jake must check in before 9 p.m. ID is required for the room. Chris attached a warming center list with addresses and costs. Most charge $25 to $30 to enter. He wrote in red that the centers fill up by 7 on cold evenings and turn people away after that. The information is useful but presents few possibilities. Something is better than nothing, which I had an hour ago. I open a new browser tab and look for financial exploitation and coercion legislation. I spent 45 minutes on legal forms and websites. Everything supports Chris's shelter statement. If the victim consents and no bodily injury occurs, manipulative or emotionally cruel behavior cannot be prosecuted. Legal protections for psychological abuse of money are lacking. Desperation isn't willing. Thus willing involvement makes me mad. A recollection strikes me while reading. Sitting at the kitchen table while my mom mixes pie crust, I'm maybe 12. My grandfather's first confession was in the 1980s, she says. She said he believed homeless people needed to accept their failures to redeem themselves. She thought he invented something noble and meaningful. The ritual of desperate people performing trauma for money. It seemed harsh, but I trusted my parents to understand charity better. Seeing clearly now. My parents aren't alone in cruelty. The illness was inherited and refined over 40 years. I record in my phone's voice memo app. I explain to myself what I've seen and why I'm intervening. Ryan died after freezing $10 short of shelter expenses. My family chuckles as I discuss clips of men breaking down at our table. Jake just wants his car fixed and a secure place to sleep, and he doesn't deserve my family's treatment. Declaring it makes the decision official and unchangeable. Saving the recording with today's date. While searching my images, I uncover one from last winter. The Warming Center downtown brochure was posted at school. The graphic illustrates their policy. $30 admission charge to avoid crowds. Management justifies the cost, but Ryan dies $10 short of safety. Systemic cruelty enhances my family's cruelty. Too many things are broken, and I'm overwhelmed choosing which to fix first. My email opens and I write to the reporter from Ryan's death piece. The newspaper website included his contact information when I searched him up. I request a confidential meeting about local homeless exploitation. I have proof of a family's decades-long practice. A minute passes with my finger over the send button. I can't go back on media involvement. The tale will be public and my family will know that I told it. I send and the email disappears from my outbox. My phone rings with voicemail less than an hour later. I listen to Braden Frank introduce himself over speaker. He received my email and is interested in the story, but he needs confirmation and many sources before publishing. He promises to keep my anonymity and not publish without my permission. He leaves his cell number and invites me to contact at my convenience. His deliberate voice is nice, but it also emphasizes how serious this is. More than just arguing with my family. I'm exposing this and considering legal action. I stare at the ceiling on my bed while saving his number. Evidence is collected. Help for Jake is arranged. The reporter awaits my call. Everything is ready, but I'm scared of what's ahead. Returning home at 5, my tummy tense with anxieties over what to do next. Tonight's dinner vegetables are being chopped by Mom. She makes the same beautiful spread every year. The smell of turkey roasting makes me nauseous, not hungry. I set my phone to capture audio and slide it beneath the flour jar on the counter. I shiver a little as I place the microphone so it faces my parents' typical speaking posture. Mom checks in to see whether I'm okay. Calls me pallid. I tell her I'm all right, just weary after my shift, and she chops again. Dad enters the kitchen minutes later, loosening his work tie. He drinks wine and leans on the counter 3 feet from my disguised phone. Dad checks his watch and says, 7:30 should work since his dinner break starts. Then mom wonders when they're picking up the McDonald's kid. Mom urges him to focus $250 this time. Says I poisoned the well by warning the boy off. Dad laughs and agrees. Says desperate people need clear incentives to overcome doubts. They discuss which dinner specifics to mention first and how to make the offer appear generous like they're selling. Mom advises they park near the dumpsters so I won't see them if I meddle again. Dad agrees and suggests displaying the cash in the car. Says money makes people happier. I pretend to peek in the fridge while they plan their manipulation strategy in casual voices. Due of his trauma, mom thinks the youngster will confess well. Says those anecdotes are always most instructional for younger family members. Dad calls tonight's dinner our family service, and they giggle about redeeming someone. Zero shame in their tones. My chest tightens when they talk about manipulating desperation like dinner. I grab a water bottle and go upstairs before they notice my unhappy face. I pause the recording and listen with headphones in my room. Every remark, chuckle, and strategic discussion is audible. Dad was talking about making desperate individuals more pleasant. Mom plans parking so I can't intervene. I save the file on my phone with today's date and add it to the older movies and images folder. I keep gathering proof, but I feel impotent. Like I'm documenting legal offenses. I text Jake again, saying I'll meet him at 7 during his break with the room voucher and lunch money. I add that he needs to hear my audio tape before deciding to go with my parents. I'm not trying to influence his decision, but he should know what he's committing to when he gets in their car. Despite feeling forceful, I send the message. Jake replies with a thumbs up emoji minutes later. I wish I could tell if he's contemplating my offer or merely acknowledging my SMS. Emily's message on my phone contains a photo of Jake's car behind McDonald's dumpsters. The window shows the rear seat full of clothes on hangers, blankets, pillows, and boxes of his possessions. Seeing him live in that tight environment, work long shifts, and sleep in a parking lot breaks my heart. Someone in his situation must find my family's $250 offer tremendous. $250 could fix his car, pay him a week at a cheap motel, or keep him warm in December. His desperation makes him vulnerable, and my family knows expect it. I texted Emily to thank her for the snapshot and urge her to watch the parking lot in case my folks arrive early. I drive to the shelter around 6 to get Chris's lodging coupon. He gives me the documents in an envelope at the front desk. He then asks me to text him tomorrow if Jake utilizes it. He writes the number on the envelope using his personal phone. Asks Jake to phone him if he needs help getting to the day labor office or updating his ID. I find practical support more real than spectacular rescue fantasies. Chris says the certificate is good for one night at the Highway Motel and that Jake must check in before 9 and show ID. Chris suggests possibilities when I inquire what happens without ID, like a work badge or a bill with his name. The system contains many little hurdles that look fair yet trap people. After thanking Chris, I check the clock in my car. Before meeting Jake, I have 45 minutes. At 7, I pull into McDonald's parking lot and observe Jake exiting the side entrance in his uniform toward his car. I exit and wave to him. He comes over looking fatigued and apprehensive, like he's not sure if he should trust me or be upset I'm still pushing. I show him the motel coupon and let him read the contents to prove it's authentic. I then play my parents' approach planning audio on my phone. Jake turns suspicious to disgusted as my dad talks about making desperate people amenable, and my mom laughs about how informative horror stories are for the family. He sits hard on the curb and puts his head in his hands when I show him old film clips of men breaking down at our table while my family watches. Hearing my family's voices and seeing the tapes proves my concerns aren't exaggerated. Jake pauses before speaking. He whispers that he's degraded things for money before and that desperate people will accept practically any terms. The flat, exhausted voice sounds like he's confessing something shameful. He requests me to guarantee the lodging voucher's authenticity and no catch. If my help has conditions, I understand how poverty has trained him to distrust kindness. Perhaps he's been exploited or manipulated numerous times. I tell him the coupon is real and that Chris at the shelter put it up and I simply deliver it. I promise no strings or expectations. I need to know he'll be safe tonight instead of having dinner with my family. Jake stares at me like he's trying to figure out what I want, then nods slowly. Checking my wallet, I count the money. $50 in tips and tiny money from my shifts and $30 from my savings jar. $80 total. I give Jake everything and say it's not a loan. No repayment required. I only need him to utilize it for food and gas for a few days until the day labor office opens. With shaking hands, Jake folds the dollars and puts them in his pocket. He gives up my folks' dinner and goes to the motel after work. I give Chris a receipt with the motel address and phone number on the back. Jake politely thanks me and returns to McDonald's for his shift. Standing in the parking lot, my phone buzzes. Braden Frank texted about permission papers and wondering if I can connect him with victims or shelter personnel who saw the pattern. He requires numerous sources before publishing. Wants a solid story. I'll ask Chris about other witnesses, but I need identity protection. The reporter's diligence is professional yet puts pressure on to get every detail right. Jake is no longer my only concern. My case could expose my family. My mom rings my phone. My stomach sank when I answer. "Where am I?" she asks with a tight, angry voice. She wants me to come home now to discuss my shelter misbehavior. My dad is talking loudly in the background. I tell her I'm with a buddy and will return later. She starts arguing, but I cut her off. My hands shake as I silence my phone, knowing I made things worse but unable to go home. I sat in my car watching Jake operate the register at McDonald's through the windows and feel the weight of what I started. Returning to the McDonald's parking lot, I can see Jake's car through the glass. The Honda by the dumpsters had frost on its glass around 5:30. As customers enter and exit the restaurant, I check for my parents' car. Simone texts me asking if I need company, and I immediately say yes. Waiting alone feels risky because my parents may arrive and I'll need a witness. My stomach drops when I notice my brother's text. Screenshots accompany the statement, his confession video paused on a man's anguished face. His caption says, "Family betrayal has consequences." He's added my name and threatened to post every video if I distribute them, letting everyone know I stole them. I feel horrible looking at the screenshot knowing he'll hurt all those men again to manipulate me. It's not only my parents' harshness anymore, like rot and timber, it runs through my family. My hands shake as I dial the law clinic number Chris provided me this afternoon from my contacts. On the third ring, a woman answers and I request a pro bono exploitation lawyer. After she transfers me, I observe Jake's automobile and examine my breathing. A woman named Celeste Fulton answers and asks how she can help. I quickly explain my family's Christmas ritual, the tapes I found, and my brother's threats. My voice is calm despite horror in every word. Celeste queries where the tapes were made and if anyone consented. I tell her the recordings were filmed at my family's dinners, and the men didn't know. I say I videotaped my parents discussing their plans in their home while they talked openly. Celeste says recording individuals in their homes without privacy is permissible, especially if I'm reporting exploitation. She explains, sharing evidence of a pattern of abuse with a journalist is protected speech as long as I remove the victim's identifying information. Legal clarity helps me breathe, but she warns about defamation if I lie. All my information is verified. She says truth is an absolute defense against defamation and asks if I need help knowing what to disclose. I thank her and hang up, feeling like I have boundaries instead of terror. In case the motel fails, I call Chris again to ask about the shelter's needs. He says they have a waiting list but can hold a bed if someone calls before 5 to enter with ID and a sobriety test. The small window for help explains why so many people sleep outside despite shelters. Chris adds that he'll personally guarantee room if Jake arrives by 8 tonight before bed duties end. He details shelter rules: drugs and alcohol prohibited, morning departure at 7, afternoon return at 4 to ensure the next night's bed. The structure maintains order, but starting from scratch makes stability practically difficult. I check my phone for a family group chat notification and see my cousin's countdown. 2 hours until Christmas Eve supper. She's excited to greet this year's guest with party emojis and exclamation points. Other family members send delighted texts, and my aunt asks if she should bring her notebook again. I want to yell at everyone who treats humiliation like entertainment. Simone's car pulls into the space next to mine as headlights sweep across my windshield. She exits and enters my passenger seat with 2 coffee cups and munchies. She shows me photographs on her phone of her tracking my parents' car using our safety app. I saw my parents' vehicle slowly pass the shelter, round McDonald's twice, and stop by Jake's dumpsters. She photographed their license plates with timestamps. They are actively hunting for him and stalking him at work. Despite not knowing what to do with the documentation, it feels essential. We drink coffee and watch the restaurant entrance in silence until Jake's shift ends at 8 o'clock. I see him leave in his uniform and hurry to his car, slumped against the cold. I exit and walk over to meet him, grabbing the lodging coupon and address from my pocket. Jake analyzes the page, then looks exhausted at me. He will go directly there if I drive ahead and verify the hotel is paid for and safe. After what he's been through, poverty teaches you to examine every promise before trusting it. I understand his caution. He nods and gets into his car when I say I'll text him after checking the room. Back at my car, I sit behind the wheel prepared to start the engine. Another memory strikes unexpectedly. Samuel faced me across the dinner table as he recounted his trauma. He looked at me like he was sorry for what I had to hear, like he knew I was a kid and shouldn't be there. My school counselor taught me grounding skills last year, so I close my eyes and breathe through the visual 5 things I see. Touchable 4 objects. 3 things I hear. Memories hurt, but they also remind me why I'm doing this. Why I can't let Jake become Samuel. Simone follows me as I drive out of the parking lot, going to the highway motel to make sure Jake can sleep tonight. The motel parking lot is my first stop, headlights sweeping across the building's crumbling pavement and flaking paint. The place looks worse than I remembered from driving by, but the office lights are on, which is what important. Park near the entrance and enter, where a tired woman behind bulletproof glass takes my voucher without comment. She slides a key across the counter and gestures to ground floor room 12. I text Jake the room number and walk over to unlock the door to find a small room with a bed, bathroom and heating. He needs nothing more tonight than warmth and safety. Jake receives a snapshot of the accommodation and is told it's real and paid for. He may come right away. My phone buzzes when he says he's 5 minutes away and can see my car in the lot. I wait outside the room, watching the parking lot entrance, my breath clouding the frigid air. Jake drives up and parks next to me, carefully exiting like he's still not convinced. He gets the key and I show him the room, ice machine, and vending machine. He asks if there's no catch, and I tell him all I want is for him to be safe tonight instead of at my family's table. Nodding, he thanks me again, his voice exhausted. Just before I depart, my folks' car comes in rapidly, tires crunching on gravel. As they park near the door, clearly following Jake or me, my stomach drops. Dad exits first and walks toward us with Mom. I recognize their false concern expressions. Holding my hand, I separate Jake and my parents. Mom starts with her sugary voice, stating they want to communicate, worry about me, and help this young man. Dad says $250 is still available if Jake comes to dinner, that my actions doesn't affect their generosity. I shout that Jake has a place to stay and doesn't need their money or humiliation. I hear my voice across the parking lot, and a pair near the vending machines turns to watch. Dad blushes and approaches, saying I'm embarrassing the family. Mom pulls me aside by the arm, but I push her off and say even louder that they should leave Jake alone and that what they do to people is awful. A man smoking outside a room records on his phone. Simone parks her car at the entrance in full view of us. Her phone pointed through the windshield. My parents see the cameras and go from angry to terror, shattering their masks when they realize this argument isn't private. A McDonald's employee, perhaps on break, asks if everything is okay. She worries about calling the police and stares at my parents and me. Dad says no, firmly, saying it's just a family dispute. Mom says we're figuring things out and don't need authorities. The staffer doesn't seem convinced, but she returns to her room and closes the door. Jake is ignored as my parents get back in their car. I hear Mom's agitated, frantic phone call through her open window as they leave. She might call my brother or aunt or find someone else to attack tonight. Someone without a coworker to intervene. Realizing I've merely sheltered Jake, not ended the cycle, my gut hurts more. If they find another desperate person elsewhere, the routine will continue as it has for 40 years. Jake softly touches my shoulder and murmurs, "Thank you." He's going to sleep. After driving closer to his room, I observe him carry his backpack inside and close the door with a click. He thumbs up when I text him, "I'll check in tomorrow." Simone drives up next to me and rolls down her window to check on me. I tell her I have to go home and get my belongings because things are about to get worse. The living room lights shine through the front windows as I arrive, but the house is dark. Knowing what's inside, I sit in my car to gather myself. I get texts from my cousin asking what happened at the motel, my brother wondering where I am, and my aunt saying the family has to talk. I turn off my phone and take my trunk's empty backpack. Brought for this occasion. At home, my parents are on the couch with my brother behind them and my aunt on the armchair. Formal, planned furniture arrangement, all positioned for a trial. I enter silently, and the silence feels deliberate. Dad clears his throat and says we need to talk about my conduct and choices. He claims I've violated a 40-year-old family custom, hampered their philanthropic efforts, and embarrassed them in public. Mom says she's disappointed because she raised me to be grateful and modest, but I've grown selfish and judgmental. My brother crosses his arms and adds, "I've always thought I was better than everyone, that I've never appreciated what this family does for people." My Aunt Susan nods, looking cold. Dad rises and approaches me, his voice growing as he says I'll confess tonight as punishment for my sins. He tells me to stand up now and explain all my failures to this family, every reason I'm ungrateful, every misstep that led here. Mom gently explains that humility and accountability will help me become a better person. She says everyone fails sometimes and I'll feel better after admitting my mistakes. Like during Christmas meals, my Aunt Susan opens her leather notebook and clicks her pen to take notes. I see my brother point his phone at me to film what occurs next. Because I interfered, they're turning the ritual they've done to strangers for years on me, their daughter and sister. My heart is racing, but my mind is clearer than it's been in days. I lift my phone up to show them the recording app. I say into the microphone that I refuse to humiliate homeless people and that what they do is psychological torture and exploitation. I think forcing someone to degrade themselves for money is unethical regardless of legality. Calling cruelty charity doesn't make it charity. My brother reaches for my phone but I hold it away and keep it filming while chatting. Dad shouts that I'm being dramatic and disrespectful and that if I don't stop now, there will be terrible consequences. Mom's voice shrieks as she threatens to cut me off. Financially, kick me out of the house, and tell my extended family I'm mentally unstable and need treatment. My Aunt Susan says she'll tell everyone what I did and cut me off from cousins, grandparents, and family gatherings. Their threats keep coming, and I record every word. Dad points at the door with a rage-shaking fist, his face purple. He says to leave his house if I don't respect family customs, am not welcome, or am not appreciative for everything they've done for me. I've been waiting for this, and part of me knew it would happen. I head to my room with the backpack I packed this afternoon with clothes, documents, my laptop, and the evidence USB drive. I rapidly pack more while my family stares from the hallway. Mom is crying, saying I'm hurting her heart and dividing the family. She doesn't invite me or apologize for anything. They don't consider whether their tradition is wrong. Dad waits with his arms crossed, waiting for me to depart. While she tears about her heartbreak, I pass them with my knapsack over my shoulder and my phone recording. Dad tells my brother to allow me through when he blocks the door. That if I leave, goodbye. I leave my childhood home in my automobile. Even though my body is numb, my hands stay on the wheel. Tonight's empty streets make the drive to Simone's flat 15 minutes of silence and weird isolation. She greets me at her door without asking questions or requiring explanation. She unlocks the door and guides me to the couch, handing me a blanket and pillow without saying anything. Jake texts me to say he's okay and sends a photo of the motel bed and, thank you. Seeing him safe and warm makes me feel better. Open my laptop on Simone's couch at midnight and pull up the files I've collected all week. I got free editing software to obscure my brother's computer movies. Audio recordings without names and slightly distorted voices. Photo of Aunt Susan's notes with identifying data blacked out. I make a statement explaining the 40-year pattern of my family, humiliating vulnerable individuals in the name of charity. The newspaper report and timings show Ryan died 3 weeks after supper, $10 short of the warming center cost. I linger over the send button in the email to Braden Frank. This will forever end my relationship with my family and render me a traitor to them and likely extended family. However, I think about Ryan freezing behind a dumpster, Jake almost sitting at that table tonight, and all the other men over 40 humiliated for amusement. I push submit and watch the email disappear online, knowing I can't recover it. I wake up at 7 a.m. Braden left 3 missed calls and a text urging me to call him ASAP on Christmas Eve. My stomach lowers when I call him from Simone's bathroom to avoid waking her. He answers the first ring and says he's in the shelter interviewing Chris, that he pulled public records about Ryan's death overnight, and that the time frame matches everything I said. His professional but frantic voice asks if I'm sure I want this tale published because it's irreversible. I told him that people need to know that Ryan died $10 below safety and my family is still doing this. He pledges to disguise my name and blur faces in the films to focus on the trend without naming victims. The call is only 10 minutes, but I feel like I've passed an invisible border I can't cross again. After that, I sit on Simone's bathroom floor, breathing, knowing the piece will go online today and my family will know someone exposed their secrets. Braden calls again at 9 a.m. to confirm confession ritual details, including the wineglass signal and Aunt Susan's journal. I check everything by glancing at my phone images, evidence I collected yesterday from my house. He says the item will publish late tonight to give my family a time to comment. But he's not waiting because it's a Christmas Eve story. I drive to the motel around midday with 2 bargain shop bags of goods and a prepared resource list Chris texted me. Jake enters looking different than 12 hours ago. The shower moistened his hair and made his face less empty. We sit in my car in the parking lot since the motel room feels too private and like I'm taking up his space. I show him the December 26 day labor office openings, free ID replacement addresses, and car repair assistance phone numbers. While I speak, he writes on a receipt. He wrote shakily but intently. Plan together. Not me instructing him what to do, but making decisions together. He needs his ID for everything, so replace it. First day labor pool applications open in the morning. Save for auto repairs to ensure reliable transportation. Finding a weekly motel cost or room share. Boring yet useful. Helping someone stabilize, not rescuing. I met another person at the motel last night who knew about cheap accommodations near the industrial park, Jake says. Maybe they can split rent if day labor works. His cautious hope tightens my chest, but not because it's breaking. Chris texts me. The shelter staff have been quietly warning people all morning about my family's pattern. He provides me a screenshot of an internal memo with warnings. Elegant pair providing Christmas dinner and cash. Unrealistic promises. Rush to the car. Over the previous few hours, several men declined rides and waited in the shelter line, even though it was chilly. One man informed workers he'd rather freeze than be humiliated for money. A little collective resistance feels significant. I know it's not enough that my family will find folks in different places like Jake. However, some are now protected. At least the shelter is warning people, not simply watching. Around 2 p.m., my phone lights up with the family group chat. I nearly don't check, but I can't resist. My cousin uploaded a photo of another man at our dining table. Elderly man with a gray beard and confusion. Message. Found a grateful guest after all. 3 celebration emojis and a love prompt. Several comments. How great, Aunt Susan said. My brother requests the nice wine. Another cousin wishes she could attend the blessing. I stare at the photo and feel helpless wrath because they walked to a different bus stop and kept going because my intervention only worked for Jake and now someone else is sitting in that chair waiting for my dad to tap his wine glass. My instinct is to call the police, but Chris told me that nothing is wrong and that you can't jail cruel people if the victim agrees. The portrait shows a grateful, hopeful individual who doesn't know what's next. Braden's article appears at 8 p.m. I read it 3 times on Simone's couch on Christmas Eve. Local family's troubling holiday tradition raises questions about exploitation, the title reads, and the narrative carefully but clearly describes the 40-year pattern without naming my family or the victims. He includes Chris's remarks regarding the shelter's knowledge, references to Ryan's death and time frame, and descriptions of the confession procedure that sound terrible. Comment section fills in minutes. Individuals debate whether this is charity or abuse, if emotional manipulation should be prohibited, and whether homeless individuals can consent to money. My parents are offering food and money, so beggars can't choose. Remark other comments. Others term it psychological torment disguised as elegance, disgusting and angry. Without clear solutions or widespread censure, people argue about the border between help and harm. Family group chat explodes at 9 p.m., and I watch live. I can scarcely read the fast-moving messages. First, my brother says the story is libelous lies created by someone with an agenda that our family has helped the homeless for decades and this is how we get compensated. My Aunt Susan says she'll sue the newspaper after Christmas by phoning her lawyer. My cousins want to know who told media or gave out family facts. My parents say they've been feeding and clothed the homeless for 40 years and are being smeared by ungrateful people who don't comprehend their charity mission. The messages persist. No one questions whether their actions are wrong, but everyone defends the tradition and attacks the article. No family member thinks the article's pattern is true or detrimental. They round the wagons and call it persecution. I file reports with every department I can locate in the city government on Christmas morning. After receiving my statement and documentation, the homeless outreach organization promises to file it, but investigations take months. After hearing my description of the pattern, Adult Protective Services says they'll open a case, but tells me that emotional abuse of adults is hard to prosecute and that people might make wrong choices under financial pressure. I enter hours, dates, times, and descriptions and upload movies, photographs, and audio to their secure servers. Kind but practical, the intake worker tells me not to anticipate immediate action or dramatic outcomes. Systems change slowly, if at all. Regardless matter the outcome, I document everything, so there's an official record, evidence, and government databases that this trend exists and has been documented. Jake texts. Around 3 p.m. on Christmas afternoon, claiming he received the day labor slot he contacted this morning, and they had an opening for December 26th at 6 a.m. He specifies the meeting location and what to bring. Instructions for borrowing or buying steel-toed boots. He seems cautiously hopeful, making me want to cry, referencing the motel employee who knows about room rentals near the worksite. The small forward movement feels more substantial than a dramatic rescue. Just a man working, planning and constructing stability. Practical step by step, I text Chris for help bringing Jake to the DMV when it reopens since he needs his ID renewed before doing day labor. Chris instantly provides specific advice on which documents Jake can use as substitutes, which DMV site is fastest, and what costs homeless persons can waive. He agrees to drive Jake there on December 26th after the day labor orientation to help him acquire what he needs through the bureaucracy. Government system navigating is laborious yet necessary. Jake gaining the job or losing it due to missing documents. Simone and I spend Christmas evening exploring online, compiling a spreadsheet of Jake and my rental options. She shows me room-sharing advertising near Jake's industrial park job, cheap weekly motels without deposits, and efficiency apartments that may accommodate someone with a bad rental history. We calculate how many hours I need to work to cover rent, food and bus fare on McDonald's wages. She gives me a quick stay on her couch while I save for first month's rent. We build a simple budget with revenue and expense columns. I am humbled by the numbers, showing how little money I have and how expensive freedom is. No family support, part-time work, staying on a friend's couch, struggling to survive at 17. But I'm also free from watching my family denigrate others. Free from charity-masked cruelty. Even though I'm worried about money, housing and the future, that counts. My volunteer stint at Pine Street begins at 9 o'clock on Christmas Day. Chris greets me at the entrance and provides me an apron, sending me to the kitchen where 3 volunteers are prepping trays. I wash my hands and shovel mashed potatoes onto plates as individuals enter the serving line. Nobody makes me feel special for being here or asking why. I serve food, replenish water pitchers, and clean up after meals. Andrea teaches me how to scrape plates to avoid dishwasher clogs. Another volunteer shows how to mop the eating area properly to avoid spreading unclean water. Chris introduces me to the weekly volunteers rather than holiday ones. They discuss work rhythm, how you show up consistently, and do what needs doing without making it about yourself. I learned to respect limits by not asking questions or solving problems. It involves providing food, clearing tables and allowing people eat without charity. The work is monotonous and my feet suffer by lunchtime. I smell like cafeteria food and industrial cleanser. I don't get big thanks or praise. I feel it more than my family did. On December 28th, 3 days later, I pass by my family's house to my McDonald's job. I pause on the walkway and look at my childhood windows and the dining room where those admissions transpired. I reach for my phone to contact Mom to explain why what they do is terrible, but I put it away and keep going. I text Braden during my break to update him. Jake started working day labor to save for car repairs. The shelter now quietly warns riders about my family's pattern before accepting rides. I'm sticking with Simone and developing a life without degrading people for fun. It doesn't end well or fairly. Jake still lives in his car and my family probably humiliated someone else, but I'm learning to trust my morals, even when it costs me everything. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.